When I think back to that summer, it feels like a lifetime ago, though it wasn't more than a few years back. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I live in a small but lively neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. Life had always felt steady, predictable even. I worked as a middle school teacher, enjoyed gardening, and spent my evenings reading in the cozy living room of my modest two-bedroom house. But all of that predictability changed the day my sister called and asked me a favor that would shift the rhythm of my daily life in ways I couldn't have anticipated. "Becca," my sister Claire said over the phone one afternoon, her voice tinged with worry, "I need your help. My job is sending me on a project assignment in Chicago for a few months, and I can't bring Ethan along. Could he stay with you until I get back?" Her words hit me unexpectedly. Ethan, my 16-year-old nephew, was a boy I had always loved dearly, but we had never spent more than a few days together at a time during family gatherings. Hosting a teenager for an entire summer, or perhaps longer, sounded daunting. But as soon as I heard the tremble in my sister's voice, I knew the answer. "Of course," I said, "he can stay with me. Don't worry about a thing." The following week, I drove to the Greyhound bus station to pick Ethan up. I spotted him instantly, tall, lanky, wearing a faded Seattle Mariners hoodie, a backpack slung casually over one shoulder. His eyes lit up when he saw me, and that familiar teenage half-smile tugged at his lips. "Hey, Aunt Becca," he said, a little awkwardly but with warmth. On the drive home, I realized just how much he had grown. The little boy who used to beg me to play board games at Christmas had become a young man with opinions, a dry sense of humor, and that restless energy unique to teenagers. I was nervous at first. What if he thought my quiet, teacherly life was boring? What if we didn't connect? But something about the way he relaxed into the passenger seat and started telling me about his school friends assured me that maybe, just maybe, this was going to work out fine. The first few days were filled with small adjustments. Ethan was messy, leaving his socks strewn across the living room, and his appetite was unbelievable. I couldn't believe how much food a teenager could consume in one sitting. At the same time, he brought a vibrancy to the house that had been missing for years. The sound of his laughter while watching sitcoms on Netflix filled the air, and his music, though louder than I preferred, added life to the otherwise quiet evenings. One afternoon, I suggested we start a small garden project together. To my surprise, Ethan agreed. We spent the weekend digging, planting tomatoes and peppers in the backyard. He grumbled at first about the hard work, but when the first little sprouts appeared weeks later, I caught him checking on them each morning before breakfast. "You know, this is kinda cool," he admitted one day, brushing dirt off his hands. "It's like watching life happen." Those moments of connection kept growing. He opened up about school, how he sometimes felt like he didn't fit in, how basketball was his passion, but his confidence wavered. I listened, offering gentle advice, but mostly just being there to let him talk. And in return, he asked me about my own life in a way no one had in years. "Why did you become a teacher?" he asked one evening as we washed dishes together. I told him the truth, that I wanted to make a difference, to help kids feel seen and valued, because growing up, I didn't always feel that way myself. He looked at me with thoughtful eyes and said, "I think you're really good at that, Aunt Becca." That simple sentence warmed my heart in a way I can't fully describe. But life is never all smooth sailing. One Friday evening, I got a call from the school principal where Ethan was set to take some summer courses. Apparently, he had skipped class with a group of kids. My first reaction was disappointment. When he came home that night, I sat him down at the kitchen table. "Ethan, what happened?" I asked calmly. His shoulders slumped, and after a pause, he admitted, "I just didn't feel like I belonged there. Everyone already knew each other, and I didn't." I took a deep breath, remembering my own teenage years and how isolating they could feel. Instead of scolding him, I said, "I get it, but running away from it won't make it better. You have to give people a chance to know you, and I'll help you through it." He nodded, and I could see the relief in his face. That night, instead of arguing, we made a plan. We talked about confidence, about small steps he could take to connect with others. It wasn't perfect, but he promised to try again. As weeks passed, something shifted. Ethan began to mature, little by little. He offered to cook dinner one night, surprising me with slightly burnt but delicious spaghetti. He even began tidying up without my constant reminders. When his basketball league opened up for summer practice, I drove him to tryouts. Watching him run across that court, giving it his all, I felt proud beyond words. The turning point came in late July when he was invited to play in a local summer league tournament. He was nervous, so nervous, in fact, that the night before the game, he sat on the porch, staring into the distance. "What if I mess up?" he asked me quietly. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Everyone messes up sometimes. But what matters is that you show up, play with your heart, and remember you belong there." The next day, I sat in the stands, cheering louder than anyone. Ethan played with determination, scoring points, making assists, and smiling wider than I had ever seen. When the buzzer sounded, his team had won, and he looked straight at me in the stands, eyes shining with pride. That moment will forever be etched in my memory. By the time Claire returned from Chicago, Ethan had grown in ways that surprised us both. He stood taller, not just physically but in confidence. Claire hugged me tightly and said, "Thank you for taking such good care of him." But the truth was, Ethan had given me just as much in return. He had filled my home with laughter, reminded me of the joy of nurturing growth, both in gardens and in people, and deepened the bond between aunt and nephew in a way I hadn't expected. Even after he went back home, Ethan continued to call me every week. "Aunt Becca," he'd say, "you'll never believe what happened at practice today," or "Guess what grade I got in math?" And every time, I'd smile, grateful for that wild summer that turned into one of the most heartwarming chapters of my life. Because in the end, when Ethan came to stay, it wasn't just his life that changed. It was mine too.